Welcome! It's a brand new day here on the Park Lark Channel. Today we're taking an adventure over to the Southern California Railway Museum here in Paris, California. It's quite warm today, it's in the high 90s, and as you can see behind me, there are these ticket booths. I've heard that these were originally installed at Disneyland and were the ticket booths back in the day when they first opened up the park in the mid-1950s. So come on, let's go along and see what we have in store here today. Original Disneyland ticket booths. Old trolley car, look at this. Wow. Gosh, I haven't seen one of those in a very long time. I recognize that horn and the bell. Holy moly. I think they are giving free rides today. We'll have to find out. Today on July the 5th, 2025, the day after 4th of July, of course, the museum is free of charge and rides are free. So yeah, that's why I came out here. Free is good. The grounds of the museum are really nice. I'm not exactly sure of the history here in terms of the grounds, but I believe it was donated to the organization which keeps this going. And there are several exhibits here, and we'll try to go through them all. They close at 5. It's around 2 p.m. so we have a few hours. It's beautiful under the shade. These, I believe, are Pacific Electric cars from, the 1920s maybe? Interesting. So we hopped on the car and we'll see how far it takes us. And the big train is just coming back. We'll get on that later. Okay, here we go.
Well, they're sort of, because they're close down. And you'll ride the ones in California, maybe. And they might show us, like they showed us on the last one, the car that's here. Yeah, so Disneyland, California Adventure. You want to, whatever you
want to say that he would assume that he could be the engineer.
There are lots of older donated rail equipment from the various railroad companies from the past. Like most industries these days, railroads were no exception to mergers and acquisitions. So modern day we have the BNSF, which is the Burlington Northern Santa Fe. Both used to be independent railway companies, but now they're one. Southern Pacific was an independent company for a very long time. As I was saying, Southern Pacific was an independent company. It was acquired by Union Pacific after it became insolvent, probably in the early 2000s, and now it's just Union Pacific. Appears to be parking for the volunteers that are part of the organization that man all of the exhibits and operate equipment, operate the retail gift store, and etc. It's like a presidential train. So we're waiting here for the full-size train to make its way back to the station, and we'll inquire about getting on board. I believe the last ride is at 3 p.m., so we're ahead of that. So I stood corrected. The large train, which takes you off the property and goes down the railroad right-of-way, which I think the museum owns and controls, is $13 for the ride. Not bad. And it contributes to the operating expenses of the museum. After all, they didn't charge today, so I was glad to do it. But it is very toasty. Of course, these cars are vintage and do not have air conditioning, and even if they did, I'm not sure they would run it. Anyway, the windows are open. There's a little bit of a breeze coming through, but it still is quite toasty here at the heat of the day at near 3 p.m. I think they take us backwards to kind of reset the system and to clear the signals to go forward. And so yeah, I think that's what they're doing. So we just went past a street, and now it looks like we've stopped, and now we're going to go forward. actually streets back in the property of the museum grounds. You can see the car going by over there, the trolley car crossing the street. There's this street here, that cross street, and it keeps going, and I think it ends down here to the right. Interesting setup. Again, I don't know. I'll have to look it up, and maybe as a voiceover to some of the B-roll, I will explain some of the history of the grounds. The Southern California Railway Museum, formerly the Orange Empire Railway Museum. The museum is a volunteer railway preservation site in Paris, Southern California. The museum site occupies 100+ acres with extensive display tracks, barns, car houses, restoration shops, and there are tracks for operating train equipment for weekend ride experiences. The organization began in Los Angeles, Griffith Park's travel town, but in the late 1950s moved to Paris and found a new home on an abandoned rail right-of-way just outside of rural Paris. The Paris site had the Pinacate station that now serves as the museum's station area, gift shop, and adjacent restrooms for visitors. Wow. This is inside one of the barns. They've got several cars in here. You can see there's lots of vintage signage collected from the area, the greater Los Angeles area. Slauson Tower is Slauson is a street in LA County. Glendale is a city in LA County. Of course, there's Los Angeles. There's this sign that was probably posted on one of the red cars, as they used to be referred to, which is Pacific Electric Railway, Sunset Boulevard, Hollywood Boulevard, Gardner Street, Santa Monica Boulevard, Cahuenga Pass, Universal City, North Hollywood, and Van Nuys. All echoes of the past from Southern California, hence the name of the museum. Speak of Pacific Electric, there's one there. Here's another one. The Bernie car, the old Pueblo trolley. You can pause the video and read the text. We'll continue on though. See? That's where they used to post those signs so that people knew where the car was headed to. And so if there were multiple lines running on some tracks, they could signify where they're going. And even if this was the only line on that track, they would know where they're going. So people wouldn't hop on something and not go where they ended up going. It's amazing construction of wood. Nowadays, they would never think of building a rail car of wood, much less even metal. Nowadays, they use man-made synthetics, such as fiberglass, other bonding materials that have no seams, have no rivets, but have comparable rigidity to metal and rivets. As you see here, this is metal with riveted joints. There may be wood underneath too. This appears to be wood frame windows. Exit door on this side, but I think the intention was always that the exit would be, this may be an emergency exit. There's one in the back. So no, maybe it was, oh, I remember. So these cars wouldn't turn around. They would just go to the end of the line. The driver would come up here and then they would go in the opposite direction. So hence the orientation of the doors. You would have the middle exit door back there, the entry door here. And if I cross the track here and show you the other side, the entry door is at that end with the middle door across from the other door. Wow. These things are huge too in terms of height. We'll go this way. Things are quite dusty and full of cobwebs. Interesting set of cobwebs. And it smells musty. I think I'm the only one in this barn. And it looks like there's evidence of animals living in here. Try not to step in the oil. And we'll take a peek at this one in the back. Oh, it's like a cable car almost. Yeah. But I think it's electric because it has, yes, it has the boom for the electric wire overhead. So this is not your San Francisco version of cable car, which would have been powered by a cable in the underneath. Here we go. Bakersfield and Kern. So this is at the southern end of the Central Valley of California. Bakersfield and Kern County. $0.05 fare. Can't get anything for a nickel these days. Subway terminal. So, for those who are familiar with LA history, believe it or not, back in the 20s and 30s, there was a subway in downtown LA, and it was built by the Pacific Electric. That was to keep these cars from interfering with street traffic, and so they would enter the tunnels north of the city where they had tunneled underneath Bunker Hill, and where Bunker Hill starts to taper off into the flatlines again of Los Angeles. That's where they put the station, and the terminal, the subway terminal, was underneath that building between Olive and I'm going to say Maine, but I'm not exactly sure. Maine might be too far. But anyway, it was off of Olive. The building later became the home of the veterans. It became a veterans hospital of sorts for much of the latter part of the 20th century. And then that closed, and I'm not exactly sure what's in that building now, but the building still exists. The subway terminal does not. When they started to redevelop Bunker Hill in the late 1960s and early 70s, the high-rise buildings of 60 and 70 stories tunneled down their foundations very far into the earth, bypassing the depth of the subway and then blocking off the tunnels so that they could build those tall buildings on Bunker Hill. So that's a little bit of history from downtown Los Angeles. It appears they have a collection of antique signaling used by railroads over the decades, perhaps even centuries. This one here is referred to as a banjo signal because it looks like a banjo. This one is a magnetic flagman. And yet another variation of the crossing bell. Literally a bell. And there's buttons here. Let's see what happens. Nothing. It might be turned off. So there's no disturbing of the peace. Nothing. And this one's a block indicator. Oh, I see some lights. Color signal, color light signal. Interesting. I see them moving. And that one over there's lit up. And there's the crossing gate with the signage of 2 tracks. Let's see if it works. No. Keep going. And that has like reflective buttons on the letters. I wish they would do that nowadays. It is so difficult navigating streets at night these days because here locally they don't repaint lane lines as necessary, and so they literally disappear and you have no idea where you are in terms of lanes when you can't even see them at night. So that's a paid political announcement. Paid by me. Oh look, that one lit up. Wow. Hope you can see that. I can't. It's kind of bright out here. I can't see my monitor screen very well. Look at the size of this thing. This one's already got a green illumination. So that would mean you're able to continue going down the track in this direction. And then there's the H2 dwarf signal. I guess because it's so low to the ground. They use those in the switching segments of tracks. Like in Los Angeles, they have LA Union Station, and so they'll have lights like that to signal the engineers if their track is open for them to proceed, and if it's red, they can't go until it turns green. Okay, and here's some kind of vintage building that might have been a train station back in the day, as they say. Well, let's make our way into this building. Ah, there's some backdrop music. Probably copyrighted music. I may have to check on that. But this is a Los Angeles Transit Line car. These, what you used to call, when I was a kid, a streetcar. And then there was a movie called Streetcar Named Desire, but I don't think this is that. But anyway, these went down rails, kind of like what you can see there, that were installed down the center of streets, main streets generally speaking. And there was one going one direction, another set of tracks going the opposite direction, and they were taking people back and forth. And they would all end up in the downtown area and then filter their way out through the city into neighborhoods, so providing transportation for the residents from their residential neighborhoods into the central city. Here's an all wooden car. Sometimes these things carried mail, sometimes they carried some other cargo that they found that if they added these to their cars, they could supplement their income by moving cargo around through the city. Here's a different vintage of the LA Transit Railway. This is, I think, a little bit more later 50s, 60s. But the system was shut down in the 60s, primarily because it was referred to as the MTA by this time, which it still has that same name today, the Metropolitan Transit Authority. Welcome aboard. Oh, I remember this very well. So I was probably about 5 years old. I'll tell a little story. I was about 5 years old. You would board these streetcars from an area that was painted as a standing area in the middle of the street. So you were standing here, similar like if they had like a striped area, and cars would be whooshing by at street speeds, 30, 35 miles an hour, while you're waiting for the streetcar to pull up, open the door, and you could hop in. Anyway, one day my mom was taking us down to do some shopping in the downtown area, and in those days you dressed up. So she was dressed to the nines in a dress and heels and etc. She had me, I think, in some kind of suit. And so when we hopped on board, there you can see maybe the toll collection box, and there was this little switch in the front of it, well, to the side facing the rear. I can kind of see it there. There's a little lever, and that lever would open up the the doors inside and allow the change to fall into the box which is underneath. So the whole thing about this was the passenger would put their fare in coins or tokens in the top. It would make clinking noises, and the clinking noises were of such that trained ears could detect coins and tokens from slugs, which were not had any monetary value. And then it would stop down, and the operator could then view the coins that were dropped in, and then the operator would hit that switch and drop the coins, and the next person would go in, and they would do that cycle for each boarding passenger. Well, my mom dropped in her coins. I was underage, so I was free. Before the driver could validate her fare, I hit the switch, thinking, it's something I could do. He slapped my hand and told me not, and he kind of, disciplined me. Well, you don't do that in front of a mother hen. She went off on the man, and he tried to defend himself, and she says, you have no right to hit him. If you have a problem, you tell me and I will take care of it. But you do not have the right to touch him. And there I was in shock, ready to bawl out crying. And so yeah, that's what happened. Fun fact. Here's a vintage photo of downtown Los Angeles. That appears to be a scroll that they would crank either above, overhead, or on the side that would allow the equipment to run on different lines if needed. Even depending upon time of day, they could switch lines and directions and have lots of flexibility in terms of how they were able to do operations to meet the needs and the demands of throughout the day. I remember these pieces of paper. These are referred to as transfers, if I'm not mistaken. I can't quite make them out there in this light. But if you needed to transfer for an additional fee, you would ask the driver, you would pay your fare for that line, and then you would ask for a transfer, and there would be an additional fee, usually not the same amount of money as if you were going to ride that separately, if I'm not mistaken. Pacific Electric. And this is a Los Angeles Transit Lines service map. I'm going to think that this is the downtown district. This is San Fernando, and this is out towards Pasadena. Yeah, Alhambra, and then continues on. East would take you out to the San Gabriel Valley, and west would be to eventually the beach. Santa Monica, Venice, Manhattan Beach, etc. But I think that's off the map. And I think that there's Hollywood, and this would be Hollywood Boulevard. Sunset Boulevard would be to the south of that. And then the Wilshire Corridor would be somewhere in here if it Yeah, it would be along here. But not knowing what the age of this map is, the Wilshire Corridor probably wasn't even a thing yet. Oh, this is some kind of memorial hearse type of vehicle, funeral car. Retired in 1924. Well, if nobody had the money to afford cars, then public transportation could do it. Take this car to Bullock's downtown. That must have been one of the first commercial advertising done. Bullock's as a department store no longer exists. I'm not sure when they went out of business, but it was a few decades ago. It was a major upscale store on the corner of Broadway and 7th, a prime location. What I remember of Bullock's is the Christmas time. Their display windows were always decorated with Christmas scenes, covering toys and all kinds of things. Even back in those days, they had holiday fruit baskets. So one of the scenes would be, of the Mission Pack brand and what you can buy, and they would display it in a way that showed a winter scene along with California oranges and citrus, packaged in a very attractive gift box that could be sent to points east.
Say the magic word, say Mission Pack, and it's on its merry way. No gift so bright, so gay, so right. Give the Mission Pack magic way.
As a gift. Rail enthusiasts always demand miniaturization of vintage cars, and these cases are examples of that. There's that infamous fair collection box. I'm not scarred by the experience, though. That was a long time ago. And if somebody were to try to do that to me these days, they'd probably have a black eye. I don't know. Maybe that's just bravado, but I certainly would have a sharp tongue. Okay. Is there an exhibit here? Yeah, there is. Ooh, it's nice and air conditioned in here. Not sure I should be in here. It looks like it's an office of some sort. I better exit before I panic somebody. It's an incredible layout that they've got here. It serves their purposes. It has structures of the periods in which rails were primary and depended on for transportation, both passenger, light rail, and heavy rail, and everything in between. Set amongst this park-like setting to kind of signify that there is a bit of a town here, kind of a small America town, complete with rails, rail station, parks, and almost commercial style building. But in modern day, they have many events here. Earlier in the year, when temperatures are much lower, they have barbecue events, vendors who come and sell their goods. I think they would probably set up along these, maybe in this area here. And I think that probably is new. So Fred Harvey is known from the early 20th century of building hotels out in various remote parts of the country adjacent to train stations so that travelers could have accommodations to be able to shower and sleep and eat as they were traveling across the country by rail. So it looks like they've got an exhibit. We'll go over there in a minute. In fact, I just wanted to get a shot of this area. I suspect that this is where they have those festivals where they have vendors and such. The Harvey girls were famous for their service and their uniformity across the country. So let's take a look. This looks like modern architecture. Back in the day, it was the stations were built much more of the variety that they had available at those days. It doesn't look like they're open today. Yeah. It appears they use the building for refreshments and other types of maybe banquets that people or organizations can contract with the museum staff to use. There go the horns of the big train headed down the track. Although they told me it was 3 p.m. the last running, but it's 4 p.m. and they're still going, so that's good. Sell a few more tickets. Oh, this is fun. That's a large-scale model train. This is reminiscent of what you find at Disneyland. Similar to the cars they have at Knott's Berry Farm in their mine train. Restoration project. Wow. The thing about these restoration projects is none of the parts are available. They have to be made. a cow car, some kind of animal car to transport livestock across the country, across a territory, across a region, across the city. Usually headed to a slaughterhouse. They're always looking for volunteers, and retirees tend to be the group of people that are readily available, or at least looking for something to do in some cases, and then they have their own interests. So you can check probably multiple boxes if they are retirees and railroad enthusiasts and want to volunteer. But we eventually go off into the big railroad in the sky, and so there needs to be backfill. Well, that's going to do it, everyone. Thank you for tuning in and coming along. I hope you enjoyed this tour of the Southern California Railway Museum here in Paris, California, on a very warm day, but very nice indeed. It's the day after 4th of July, so there was no admission other than just the admission for the train ride, but that's okay. So again, I hope you come back to the Park Lark Channel, and we always have something good coming in store. So until next time, goodbye.